Hi everybody, and welcome to today's live class on Facebook and GoToWebinar. Can you say opportunity costs, time savers for your home business? I'm Courtney Kibitza with Stahls TV, and today we're going to be talking all about different ways that you can save yourself some time and cut some cost in your shop. When you run a home business, it's undoubtedly that you're running a bunch of different directions and you're looking a ton of different ways to produce items in your shop. And one of the things about running a business with limited staff is that your time is incredibly valuable. And so being able to get back time is the most important thing. Being able to outsource whenever it's important, whenever you can, being able to leverage other people or other resources in areas that you may not be as seasoned or as much of an expertise in, that's all very important. And so today what I'm going to do in this class is share some ways that you can save time in your home business. And so I have a presentation that we'll be going through today. You're welcome to download a copy. If you're joining me on Facebook Live, there's a link above it in the description where you can download that presentation to keep on hand with some of these tips. And if you're on GoToWebinar, you can see that in the handout section. So you're able to kind of join in a little bit with that. When it comes to looking to find ways to save time in your business, you're looking to save time in art production and t-shirt printing and the way that you produce transfers, and even all the way on the other side of sales and marketing and the business aspect where you spend a lot of your time juggling those tasks as well, because you're not just the person producing transfers and producing garments, you're also going to be the person who's selling and marketing and doing all of that side of it as well. And so I'm going to head over to the presentation to talk about the first topic. And this one, which is going to be simple solutions for working smarter and faster, is looking at how you set up your home business. We don't really think about this whenever we buy our first heat press or we buy our first cutter or even an embroidery machine. We don't think about where do we lay things out. It's recommended that you try to minimize the steps in between processes. So this blueprint's a good example of a way to set up your business. Whether you're running it from a small garage or your basement or a guest room, setting it up in either a U shape or an L shape where you can easily move between the different areas will help to minimize the steps that you're doing in between. So having a weeding table and your computer next to your cutter, having a table next to your heat press, and all of that in a close manner so I can work back from the heat press to the cutter to the weeding table in an easy workflow. One example I always give of this is if you've ever had a set up a kitchen, they always recommend that you put the refrigerator and the sink and the stove in a certain workflow so that it's easy for you to maneuver between those three elements, and it works the same whenever you're going through that as well. And so set up your blueprint in that way. Also, as you're setting this up, make sure you're setting up things like scissors, weeders, trash cans, and all of that in areas that you can easily access and get available to you. Because if you're running around looking for a trash can for your garbage or running around looking for scissors or weeders, you're going to find that you're going to be using a lot of extra time that you don't need to be able to search for those tools. I know we do that a lot in our office, just spending time looking around things that you've lost. So making sure you have extra weeders, extra scissors, and having them in locations that you easily won't be misplaced, especially if multiple people are coming into that room and using those things. Even if it's a home business, you know there may be another person who helps you. Maybe it's a spouse or a child or somebody who's also doing some of the steps in the process there. So definitely think about the ways that you set up your business and minimize the steps you're doing in between what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So if you're heat pressing and vinyl cutting, setting those up close to each other. If you're heat press and embroidery, setting those up near each other so you can easily run the two and maximize the time that you're spending in that location. And now later in today's presentation, we will talk about some additional tips for when you're heat printing and doing other things at the same time. So the blueprint is very important. The next thing we're going to talk about is the first step in the process, which is going to be the artwork time savers. So if you're working with artwork, a lot of the time there's a lot of time tied up in artwork creation, whether it's creating new designs or making customization or making names and numbers or just in general coming up and reinventing the wheel. You don't always have to reinvent the wheel, so we're going to look at 4 different things that will help save you time in the artwork process. The first one is the EZView Designer. I recommend going through templates or creating if you're going through custom designs, creating your own templates that you can easily customize, or looking for sources like Transfer Express's EZView Designer, where you can easily order transfers or use their templates and their ideas to create custom artwork. So rather than reinventing the wheel, they're constantly coming up with thousands of templates that you can use with their screen printed transfers, and that'll allow you some easy ways to create the artwork and order the transfers and get back to doing things that will really invest in your business, and that may be selling or producing garments or marketing your business to different local shops. So let's take a look at this designer and how easy it is to use. I'll select a layout from the EasyPrints Layout Designer. And you'll see there's a ton of different layouts for markets. There's a bunch of trendy different designs, a lot of opportunities here. Since we have football season coming up, I'm going to go ahead and select the Our House, which is a really cool, trendy, distressed looking print. So again, we're seeing some things with these designs that they're very unique, very custom. So it's a great way to personalize for your specific school. So instead of it being for Compton, I can edit any part of this design. I can edit the clip art, I can edit the text, I can edit the mascots. I'm going to change out the Compton by selecting it, heading over to the Edit Text Designer, and then typing in my school, which let's just put Morgantown, which is where the school I'm located is. Morgantown may not be the Eagles, so I can go ahead and swap out that clip art. Again, I just selected, click swap, and it'll bring up a ton of different categories. You'll notice throughout the designer that there are a variety of categories and layouts available. This is just the clip art that's available for the designer and to be used within the designer. So let's say they're the Knights. I'm going to go ahead and select an image that I think fits, that I like best for this market, and it looks like the mascot for my school. We'll go with the simple one here. I'll double click it and you can see it's replaced that eagle head now with the knight, and so I can now sell this to the Morgantown Knights. I can edit the colors for the screen printed transfers. I can get real life quotes for pricing, which we'll talk a little bit here later about ways to speed up the process of prices. As I see somebody, Dennis, this must be a Morgantown fan because he said go Ears. We're pretty big fans here of West Virginia as well. So thanks for that on Facebook Live. And then that's a really quick and easy way to create templates. And so this is just a small taste of the designer. On the handout from StahlsTV.com, you'll see that you can easily go to transferexpress.com/designer and you can register or log in to play around with this a little bit. But there are a ton of layouts. Just to show you a few of the categories, we've got basic layouts, fashion categories, school market. So when you're thinking about selling to different groups in schools, they're all there as well. Different sports, occasions for events, Christmas, holidays, all of that's on there as well. Corporate occasions, and then also some promotional layouts and different layouts there as well. So huge opportunity there within the EZView Designer. So when you think about saving time in the artwork, look at where you can outsource that. If you don't have a design concept yet and you're selling into a market, then I would recommend starting there rather than and reinventing the wheel. Let's say I'm going to start to sell into 5K walks and runs. Rather than me taking the time to create 5 or 6 designs to go out to sell to this market, I can create designs in Transfer Express's EZView Designer that can easily be customized for any event that I sell to, show them these are my layouts and my designs, I can customize them for you, and then it's easy for me to do that in just seconds inside the designer, and so you're freeing up the time that you're doing a lot of custom work. I work with a lot of apparel decorators and I hear a lot of the time that they create custom artwork for a customer, and while this is a separate conversation, they never hear back from the customer. Maybe they charge for their time. A lot of home businesses, and maybe this is you, don't charge for that time, and they just take it out of the cost of doing business and include it into the package because you're trying to get started, or maybe you don't think that you should charge for art fees. But if you're doing that and you're spending a lot of time in the artwork process, then you really need to look at how you can maximize your time by using templates that are unique like this. And there's thousands available, so it's not like you're going to run out of ideas. They're constantly adding new ones in there, so it's a way to stay fresh without reinventing that wheel. The next thing I want to look at, we've looked a little bit at the EZView Designer, but the next thing I want to look at is going to be CADWorks Live. So we talk a lot about CADWorks Live here at Stahls TV. They have a side of CADWorks Live system that we don't show as much. It's called EZTeams. If you've ever created names and numbers for a local team or you've considered doing that, a lot of the times without this system, what you'll need to do is create each name and each number separately, edit them separately, and it just takes a lot of time. So I want to show you the EZTeam Designer because if you're doing names and numbers or considering doing names and numbers for team uniforms, it is a gift. It is truly phenomenal. CADWorks Live, the system is free for any Stahls customer, so it's very easy to use and it's free. So this tool is just a gift to you for being a Stahls customer. So under the designer, instead of launching the normal design studio that we show often here on Stahls TV, I'm going to launch the EZTeam Designer. So this designer is a little bit different, but what's neat about it is if you get a team of, let's say, 20, 30, 40 players that are going to be coming into the to you wanting them to print their jerseys, then you can easily create the names, numbers, and customize them. One way to do this is to go ahead and just enter the names. You'll see me do that here at the bottom of the screen, so I can start typing in some names and numbers and it'll start to populate them. The easiest way to do this is to ask your team leader or your coach or whoever's supplying the list of names to provide them to you in what's called a TXT or a text file, or even just a simple Word document. So all they need to do is create a Word document like I have here and type the names with the last name, a comma, space, and then a number. Doing this, and you'll see I've done this with multiple names here, and then file, save as a text file. So I'm selecting a plain text file option there. I'll say okay, I can go ahead and convert it to that file type. Saving it as that TXT or that text file then will allow me to go in here to the CADWorks Designer and just import the roster. So I don't have to go through and individually edit. So not only does it save me time in typing in the names, it saves me from the risk of that I might type a name inaccurately or going back through to double check to make sure you didn't do one inaccurately. So I'll click Import Roster from Text File, select a file. You can see it's going to bring in all those names that I had just placed on there. I'm going to replace the existing ones since it's a lot of duplication. And here I've brought in all those names and numbers, and so I can edit these, and I can even bring in multiple teams and do this all together at once. And doing that, I would just select the ones that I want to edit together. So let's say those 8 names that I just imported are all going to be for the same team, so I want them to have the same style, the same colorway, and everything. I'm going to select over to the style section just in that top bar there on the left hand side of your screen, and I'm going to select a name or a number style. So I can choose quick styles that are already created, or I can create a custom one from the edit style. I'll just go ahead and select a quick style. So we'll click one with an arch here, open. I can even edit the number style and pick a specific font. So let's say I want an athletic font like a varsity. Just scrolling through all of the fonts that are available. Open this up. And so now as I make these edits, I'm actually going to go ahead and edit the name style as well to be the same font. But the cool thing about this is when I make every single one of these edits, by changing the font and changing the number, it actually makes that same change on every single one of these files. So as long as it is selected with the arrow or with the check mark, I don't have to worry about going back into the system and doing that process for every single name and number. So I don't have to recreate every single one of them, and I don't have to go through the process of changing them out to make sure that everything works and looks the same. And so it's a huge time saver if you start to do names and numbers and creating them. Also outputs it to a vector cut software and one easy way to cut everything. So just an incredibly easy tool for names and numbers and creating that artwork as well. I'm going to jump back to my presentation here, and we're going to talk a little bit about some additional services. So we talked about templates and how that can save your time, whether you're setting up your own custom templates for your custom t-shirt designs or just leveraging something that's available. The CADWorks Designer is perfect for EZTeams. Next, I want to talk about production-ready artwork. There is a huge benefit to having artwork that is created for the process that you're going to be creating it for. Often I see artwork that is beautiful artwork for direct-to-garment printing or full-color printing, but when it's taken to a process like embroidery or vector cutting, it's no longer optimal for those two processes. And so what happens is decorators will either struggle to dumb it down to that software, to that type of print process, or they'll just be challenged in not being able to do it. And so just by starting with artwork that is optimized for your print process will help you in production and producing garments. And transfer production is one of those things where that's huge. So I want to show you an example of two pieces of artwork. One is going to be optimized for vinyl cutting and for weeding. So I've cut both of these designs on a vinyl cutter before the class. The other one is not going to be optimal for that. So it's just going to be a basic type of clip art system. And so as I go through and edit this one and do the pick areas that are required for the design that's not optimal for vinyl cutting, you're noticing that the grooves, every single one of these have a separate stop and go point. So there's a lot of edits in here that need to be weeded out. So with heat transfer vinyl, often the artwork has a lot of detail, it has a lot of weeding steps, and so this stop and go with the artwork can really take up a lot of time, especially for a very detailed piece of artwork like this. I'll just weed out a couple more areas of this so you can kind of see how the detail is. And this I'm just using CAD cut fashion film for weeding, but you're noticing there's a lot of different areas that are going to need to be picked up with this to be able to get this graphic to be nice and detailed. And so when I take a piece of artwork that's going to be optimized for the vinyl cut process, the difference is the artwork now doesn't have as many stop and start points. So I can start in one corner, we'll start in that same headpiece, and now as I start to weed all these areas, you'll notice how it just pulls into all of those cavities. So instead of me doing a lot of stop and start, I can easily weed the entire design out with just a few pull areas. So it really can increase your speed in being able to weed this. It depends on your artwork. Of course, there's examples of this that could be very exaggerated, very detailed, but I've seen decorators that have even been able to save anywhere from 60 to 80% of their weeding time just by choosing artwork that isn't as detailed and that is actually optimized for what they're creating. And that's incredibly important with transfers for vinyl cutting. Here again is another example. So just because a piece of artwork is vector does not exactly mean that it's perfect for vinyl cutting. And so look for artwork that is optimized when possible, or that is a little bit more simplified for the vinyl cut process. This artwork, while it's simple in the weeding process, the nice thing is that it doesn't take away the detailed aspect of the logo. And so we're able in just a few pull areas to get that full Spartan head logo, so I don't have to go through all those individual areas. Artwork like this, one place to look for it would be GreatDaneGraphics.com. So if you haven't looked at their artwork, that's just another big benefit of using a software like that. So Great Dane Graphics is actually a subscription-based program where you can log in and download a specific amount of pieces of artwork throughout the month. And so you're able to constantly get new artwork and be able to refresh your designs in that way without having to reinvent the wheel again, looking for clip art constantly, just having one site and one resource that you can go to for that. And since it's optimized for your process, if you're doing a lot of vinyl cutting, it's great for that as well. So GreatDaneGraphics.com is where you could find information on that. The last thing I want to talk about is when you get those pieces of artwork that are not optimized for your print process, but you absolutely have to use them because they're the artwork that your customer provided. That is usually a low quality image, possibly a raster image. So if you're doing a print process like screen printing or vinyl cutting, or even sometimes with print and cut or digital processes, a lower quality image is difficult to cut. So we'll show you two different ways that you can outsource this. There's a lot of time that can be taken into the steps required for vectorizing a piece of artwork. And so the CADWorks Live Designer actually has a vectorizing tool that you would probably want to check out first before you spend a lot of time editing nodes and doing different steps in a software like CorelDRAW or Adobe Illustrator. I'm going to just click Import and Vectorize and show you an example of how the vectorizing tool can quickly do this. So I just import my artwork, select a background color, select a foreground color, and then it does the steps. So I don't have to do a lot of note editing, I don't have to do a lot of redrawing. This works really great for high quality images. So the image that I brought in was actually a pretty high quality image, and so it vectorized it very clean. You can see the lines are pretty clean, so there's not a lot of issues there with that. If you're using a software that's not quite as robust, or a piece of artwork that's not quite as high quality, another tool to use would be a website called Aardvark Express. This is kind of a secret tool that we use at the Stahls TV studios that actually you can upload, create an account and upload your artwork, and they will go through the process of creating it for you. So if you have a raster image like you see here on the website and you want it turned to a vector, you can pay for that fee. Now, of course, there is a charge associated with that. But when you think about these types of things, you have to think about you're only one person, or maybe you have 1 or 2 people in your shop. Is your time best spent vectorizing artwork, or is your time best spent working with businesses, marketing, selling, and doing different resources like that, and allowing a software or a separate company to outsource everything, to do the artwork side of it, and you're outsourcing that? One thing I'm going to harp on throughout this whole presentation is that you find your strengths as a business owner and you really leverage those. Well, I mean, of course, we're going to show you ways to save your time so you can do it all, but understanding where you're the best and where you can outsource things is going to be incredibly important to maximizing your time overall. And so artwork is one of those things that you need to find where you think you can outsource those things. Maybe it's templates, maybe it's in using softwares like these to create your artwork, or just outsourcing different things like that. So that's a lot for the artwork production time-saving tips. The next thing we're going to talk about is transfer saving tips. And so if you've ever worked with heat transfer vinyl, actually if you have a vinyl cutter and you work with heat transfer vinyl, go ahead and like the broadcast now if you haven't liked it yet. Just want to see how many people we have on today that are, and you can like us on Facebook for that, but I want to see how many of you actually own a vinyl cutter. It helps me to share some additional tips here on the presentation. So I see a couple of you liking it, so you must own vinyl cutters. When it comes to weeding heat transfer vinyl, there are some things that you can do to save yourself time. First, you want to utilize roll goods, and if you're able to look at upgrading a system to a servo motor, I would highly recommend doing so. I work with a lot of people that are home businesses and they start with a small cutter, and that absolutely will allow you to get into the game. But as you start to do a lot of work with a vinyl cut process, is being able to step into something with a servo motor. So one thing about a lot of small home-based vinyl cutters is that they're traditionally stepper motors. So the stepper motor doesn't run near as fast, and those small cutters a lot of the times will not take rolls. And so if you're able to upgrade to a larger cutter like a Graphtec CE6000 or a Roland GS24, being able to have that wider space that takes rolls of material will just help to speed up the process, because now you can gang together multiple images and that servo motor is going to run a lot faster. And so you're working at a speed of about 3 to 4 times as fast as your stepper motor cutter. And so I'm comparing something like a Silhouette Cameo to a Graphtec CE6000. Being able to upgrade to that and get 3 times faster capacity is an incredibly huge time saving if you're doing a lot of heat transfer vinyl. So I'd highly recommend looking at that. If you're doing a lot of that, again, it's an investment. Think about how many jobs you're doing and how long it'll take to pay off your vinyl cutter. We work a lot with decorators that very easily, you know, even if you have a small format cutter, how much you made off of that $300 cutter. How many of those jobs are you going to have to sell to get to maybe a $2,000 investment, and how many hours can that save you? If you're spending a lot of time at the cutter or constantly cutting down sheets and loading them in, then it may be time to upgrade to that machine. Weeding is another area of the heat transfer vinyl production process where you can very easily speed up the process with a few different tips and tools. So I'm going to share a few of those with you now. I'm just going to set these over to the side to do that. The first thing is how you weed. So how you weed your designs is going to really change how quickly you can how quickly you can weed the designs. And so I'm going to flip this. Actually, I'll start the wrong direction of what I would recommend. So first you want to start with a nice flat surface. I'm using the Easy Weeding tool. If you've never seen one of these, it looks very similar to a dental pick type tool. But what it does is it allows me to easily grasp the area, and if I have multiple pick areas like you saw I have with that artwork a little bit earlier, I can easily pick them all up at once and move on. Now you'll notice the direction that I'm weeding this product, which is called Sport Film Light, is I'm weeding it away from the cavities. And so as I'm doing this, you're noticing a lot of breaking that's going to happen along the way. This can be a complete time suck, especially if you're working with a material that's a little bit more difficult to see cut lines, maybe a glitter material, because now what I'm going to have to do is I have to go back in and clean up all of these cavities. Now if I have the Easy Weeding tool, the nice thing is I can pick up multiple pick areas together and load them onto my scrap so I can easily pick these up quickly. But the optimal way to actually cut this name would be to weed the other direction. So starting on the other direction of the name, I'm going to actually weed it this separate direction. So as I'm weeding it this way, you're noticing how it's pulling into all of those cavities a little bit better. Stand up here so I can get a better grasp of my material here, but you're noticing as I'm doing that, I'm seeing a lot less breakage with the material. And so if you can weed and pull inside the cavities, it'll help to significantly cut down the back and forth that you have to do when you're picking up the extra materials. Again, looking at that Easy Weeding tool versus something like maybe an X-Acto knife or another type of picker, it allows me to easily hold all of those little scraps on there and then discard them at once. You could even, if you have a sticky backing from a product like CAD Cut Fashion Film or Glitter Flake, you could take all of those little sticky pieces, stick it back down on that sticky carrier, and then keep weeding. So rather than them getting stuck and you having to do a lot of messing with it to get them off, that's a great tip as well. In addition to that, another way to really quickly speed up your weeding process is to heat up the material. There's different ways to do this. The way I'm going to show you is using the Stahls Easy Weeding table. So I'm going to head over to that now. It's just right here next to me. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how this works and why it works. And then also we'll share some ideas on ways it can improve your production. So I have a CAD Cut Fashion Film transfer I'm just going to lock into place on this weeding table. If you're running a home business and you have a small location, you're probably thinking that you don't have a lot of space for this in your shop, but you certainly could find room easily. This actually flips completely flat. So if I want to store it somewhere maybe under a bed or in a closet or behind a bed, I could easily do that. It could stand up and won't ruin the table at all. So it lays completely flat and can easily slide under there. I'm going to put it back up high so you can see what I'm doing as I weed this design. So it has 3 different positions for the incline, so that makes it nice if I want to not have to bend over and do a lot of weeding with maybe my neck bent down or hurting myself that way. It heats up in 3 different areas, so I actually have it on the highest setting, and I'm going to let my fashion film warm up a little bit before I head over to weed it and kind of show you the process. When I take a design like this, and I'll just start the corner, removing it from its clip so I can show you. When I take the corner of the material and I heat it up, I reduce a lot of the breakage. So if you saw, this is that same fashion film product that I had weeded a little bit earlier with the artwork examples where there was some breaking and the way that I was pulling it. When you heat it up, you reduce a lot of the breakage that happens. So I can pull off long continuous pieces like this and then go back through and clean out the rest of my design. And so just in heating up the material, I can very quickly weed away all of that excess material. So now once I have that large graphic there completely weeded, I can go back through and pick up those additional areas again using that Easy Weeding tool. And the 3 different temperature settings are really nice because it allows you to kind of set the temperature that works best for you. And so if it's a little bit too warm at the high setting, you could turn it down to a medium. It doesn't get any hotter than 130 degrees, so it's still a very low temperature. You can see even at the highest setting, I've been holding on to it the whole time there. And so it was super easy to weed that design there. I want to show you one more example with something like the glitter flake. So I'm going to take this off and just load on my glitter flake example to kind of show you how it works there, because I do know that glitter flake can be one of the more challenging materials to weed. simply because of the texture in the material, and there's a lot of breaking because of that texture. Now while this is heating up a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about weeding without that. So I'm going to head over to my table here and just show you a little bit more of the breaking in that same design. So taking this off of the table as we can compare a little bit, again I'll start in my corner that goes in towards the cavities, and you're noticing as I'm pulling at this, there's a lot of breakage. And so it's not near as easy for me to quickly pull that one space that we had seen a little bit earlier as I was weeding that other design. And so being able to cut down on a lot of that breakage, pull that apart, start again. That start and stop really takes a lot of time in producing these types of transfers. And so the Easy Weeding Table actually works with any hot peel material. So that was CAD Cut Fashion Film. This one's going to be CAD Cut Glitter Flake. And so I'm just going to find my corner up here for my design. And once that material heats up a little bit, it really weeds kind of like a dream. I mean, this is CAD Cut Glitter Flake just weeding. This is the word text that says Love Yoga. So I'm able to really speed up the production. Now another way you could do this is you could certainly heat up the bottom platen of your heat press and lay your transfers on top of there. However, being able to keep that continuous heat for a large piece of transfer like this is really ideal, where your platen is going to cool down. So while it might be easy to start, once you get down towards the second half, it might be a little bit more difficult to weed. And so there's a lot of benefits to having this type of weeding table here. So I see a couple questions as I'm coming through on Facebook Live. I know a lot of you guys love the either the weeding table, CADWorks Live, you love vinyl cutters. Someone had asked Ray, the Roland GS24, how much is it? It runs around $1,900, so just around $2,000 for that machine. And you can find that at Stahls.com as well. And so being able to heat up your material really can increase your production capability. So that's one big benefit. If you're doing a lot of heat transfer vinyl, I highly recommend looking into this. I'm going to head back over to the presentation because I want to share a couple of other tips for saving time and really implementing it. You're able to see with the Easy Weeding Table how much time I could save. I want to talk a little bit more about bringing that number to real life. So the job is a 10-inch by 8-inch design in black CAD Cut Glitter Flake. So looks very similar to what I just created in orange CAD Cut Glitter Flake. So using that as an example, if I weed this without the weeding table, it could take about 2 minutes and 41 seconds per design because of all the breakage that may happen and all of the stop and go that I'd have to deal with. When I use the weeding table, it's going to take me about 1 minute and 12 seconds. So for every single one of those designs that you weed, you're going to save 1.5 minutes per design. And so the big benefit of this is every time you weed 40 designs with a weeding table, you're going to gain back an hour of your workday. And so you think about what you can do with that hour. You could be maybe creating new artwork. You could be selling more products, meeting with local businesses, working on things on your website or your social media to try to produce more orders. There's a lot of things you can do with an hour, especially if you plan your day and maximize your time, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Being able to weed different products on a weeding table like that. And so I really recommend considering that as an investment if you do a lot of heat transfer vinyl to speed up your processes. The next thing I want to talk about with transfer production is to consider outsourcing. Understand that your time is incredibly valuable, and I know a lot of people that love their vinyl cutters. I love them too. But if you're vinyl cutting and weeding all of your designs, sometimes there's a smarter way to be doing that. One way is to consider and know when to outsource. So often I hear a lot of decorators that own a vinyl cutter, they get an order for 50 or 75 pieces and it's single color, and they say, great, I can do this on my vinyl cutter because it's one color, no problem, very easy. And it may be a very simple design that you can easily cut and weed on your vinyl cutter. But when you think about the time of that you're spending in weeding versus the time of maybe outsourcing it, you can save a lot of time. So let's look at this job when we say know when to outsource. Anytime I would hit an order over 50 pieces, if you're vinyl cutting, I would recommend looking at a screen print transfer option and at least pricing it out to see, is it comparable, is it close, maybe it's worth me just outsourcing the printing of that transfer rather than going through the process of weeding it and cutting it all myself, especially if I don't have staff to help me with that. So this job here would be an example of one that I would quote out for that application. So to do this, what I've done is I've looked at a one color design that is 12 inches by 5 inches. It's a full front print, 75 pieces in the order. To find my fashion film cost, I actually used a calculator that I'm going to reference here a little bit later in the presentation. And I considered that with a 15% overhead percentage, paying myself or my employee $10 an hour if I have somebody who helps me out part-time in the business, doing a number of cut designs that take 2 minutes to weed in that fashion film. And I'm finding that with 75 pieces in this order, it's going to take me about 2.5 hours to produce. And it would take me it would cost me about $87 in my material cost and my weeding time. So that gives me an idea of what it's going to cost me to produce that entire job. So once I use that calculator that I'll show you to access and go more in detail here in a little bit, I compared that to the pricing calculator that's available from transferexpress.com. This pricing calculator, again, it gave me an option for being able to see what my transfer was going to cost me to quickly compare to my cost per vinyl. One thing I noticed about the artwork is that it seems kind of short. 12 inches by 5 inches can give me the ability to gang sheet my designs together, and a gang sheet basically means you can place multiple images together on one sheet to cut your cost. And so with a design that's 12 inches by 5 inches, first I want to check and see if I can gang it up before I get my sheet pricing. I'm going to calculate that to find out, yes, I could definitely get 2 up on my screen printed transfers. So I'll scroll back up to that screen printed transfer price calculator. And I'm just going to type in 38 sheets because since I can get 2 up, I know that I can get 75 transfers across 38 sheets. One color, I'm going to select Goof Proof, which is their most popular ink transfer. And for this example, I did use the EZPrints transfers, and so Transfer Express will allow you to print your own artwork versus their artwork. I use that template system to quickly save me some time in the artwork production as well. And here I was calculating $87, so almost an identical cost for me to order screen printed transfers for this job versus doing it with heat transfer vinyl and weeding it myself. So the cost savings is pretty much equal. Where the real savings is in the weeding time. And so I'm able to save myself 2.5 hours because all I had to do was click a couple buttons, send the artwork to Transfer Express, and they were able to print my design for me. And so knowing when to outsource is really, really essential for a home business. Understanding that while you can do a job, it doesn't mean that you should do it. So like I said, I recommend once you hit 50 pieces of an order, especially if it's single color, 75 to 100 if it's 2 color, start to just consider what it would cost to outsource the transfers. I've worked a lot with home businesses that start with vinyl cutters and do them a lot for customization and personalization, and they find that once they start to take on more orders and produce more, that they're more profitable by using screen printed transfers in addition to those. So once they hit that threshold or that magic number that works for their business, they find that that's just a little bit more cost effective for their and more effective for their timing as well, being able to produce them in that way. And so understand when to outsource. Screen printed transfers is definitely one way to do that. Another way to consider that is just outsourcing your vinyl transfers and having them cut and printed in a different manner. And so with that respect, what I would recommend doing is maybe outsourcing to somewhere like Stahls.com where they can do custom cutting for lower quantity. So if you only need 6 pieces or 12 pieces or maybe a smaller order and the transfers don't really work, you can also look at Stahls ID as an option for that as well. And so one way to check the pricing on that I'd recommend is just downloading a pricing catalog from the Stahls website and then reviewing the pricing there for your custom job. And so that's also really great for things like the just being able to do glitter flake and different items like that. I see a question coming in, John, about there's a minimum order. Sometimes I just need 10. So that would be a solution, being able to outsource those lower quantity jobs that you don't want to cut or weed yourself to Stahls for them to produce, because they have a minimum of 6 for those. And actually I'll show you another tool that's really cool on the Stahls website that has a minimum of 1. So even if you're doing some customization, you can utilize that tool. That is the CAD-CUT templates tool. So again, outsourcing to these types of things. This template tool is another tool similar to EZView. Let me just log in here so we can use the designer, where I can then select my template. I can easily edit it, and then I can order, like I said, as low as 1 for my specific market. So I'll select Riverside and change it again to Morgantown. Swap my clip art out for this night, so you can see a variety of clip art items available as well. And then I'm able to create my design and do a lot of customization here. I can add clip art, I can add text. There's a ton of templates. Not only are there full-size templates available, like you can see here as I'm scrolling through some of these, but there's also templates for left chest, for leg and sleeve applications. There's always new ones being added to this as well. But the cool thing is it allows you to get a lower number if you need a smaller amount through these types of systems. Angela, I see a question coming in. You asked, what about outsourcing high number vinyl orders? And so with that one, if you're outsourcing high number of vinyl orders, that's another great opportunity as well, because you can easily do that through Stahls.com, numbers or custom designs, and your pricing will actually drop as you increase in your quantity. But again, that's where I use an example of like CAD-CUT Glitter Flake, where you have a specialty finish and maybe it is a large order, like 100 pieces, and you don't want to cut and weed all of that yourself because you know it's going to take you 2 or 3 minutes per design, and so you want to be able to save yourself, let's say, that 200 to 300 minutes of a workday, being able to get that time back. So 4 hours of your workday is going to be spent weeding this job. You can absolutely outsource them. Stahls will produce those as well, and you can easily get back that time spent once they come in. All you have to do is heat press them, and so the cost will be a little bit more. You may be looking at a cost difference of maybe $2 to cut it yourself versus $4 for them to cut it for you. But again, it's that time savings. It's being able to understand that you can make more profit when you're not spent weeding. Maybe your time is spent looking for new business or selling more jobs. And so understanding that trade-off is really important in saving yourself some time in your shop. So those are some ideas for outsourcing your designs and applications. The next thing I want to talk about is going to be t-shirt printing time savers. So way to save time in your business by printing faster or printing more productive. An auto open heat press is a great way to do this because, as I said in the beginning of the production, where I had done a layout of a U shape or an L shape, where I was talking a little bit about maximizing your time, being able to press something and then move on to something else, maybe weeding a design or getting ready and laying out your second shirt. So rather than spending your time standing next to your heat press, you can actually take the time to go ahead and do something else productive with your time, especially if you're doing something like sublimation, which requires a longer dwell time. So auto open press is a big deal. Threadability, which is a tongue twister there. I'm going to head over to the Fusion and talk a little bit about threadability. Rather than talk about it, I guess I'll show you it. So threadability is a huge benefit with your machine. And so being able to have the ability to load an item on in a unique way. I see a lot of decorators, and I'll just grab this t-shirt here as an example, that will load a t-shirt onto their clam press that doesn't have the option to print this way, and they do a lot of this. Shake it out, try to get all the wrinkles, making sure it's all completely flat, and there's a lot of time that can be taken up in just prepping the garment to prepare it for the application if you're doing it that way, especially if it's a very trendy garment like maybe a loose fit performance shirt or a tri-blend. This process allows me to quickly and easily split it open, thread it on, and then I can easily line up my designs onto the garment. And so that's a really nice tool there in the threadability. If you're doing a lot of fronts and backs, maybe jerseys or different options, you can easily take the shirt, spin it around, and then print the back as well. So it takes saves a lot of time, usually about 30% time in the time that's taken. So now I've taken my shirt off to print the other side. I'm going to flip it over, shake out those wrinkles, make sure they're all flat so I'm not getting uneven surface or getting any extra wrinkles on the shirt. So you can just see there's a lot of time savings in being able to do that. One other reason that the threadability works is because of this cover I have on the bottom of the heat press. It's called a quick slip pad protector or a non-stick cover. This cover actually allows you to easily throw those garments on and off. They slip and slide, and so it makes it easier to thread it. Without that, the shirt kind of grabs and catches on this Teflon covering. And so these, I believe, run somewhere around $60, so it's an incredible investment for the time savings and not having to, and being able to just easily slide the shirts on and off. They just kind of fit right over top of your platen there, and they come in a variety of sizes. So quick slip pad protector paired with this threadability. The other nice thing about threadability and the heat presses that have interchangeable platens is the ability to easily print fronts and backs and also items like a football jersey without having to use a pillow. So if you're used to printing jerseys or you're thinking about printing mesh jerseys in your home business, one thing that a lot of decorators do that aren't able to thread it is because of the high mesh holes here, I have to make sure that I am separating those layers so the adhesive doesn't press through to the back. And so to do that, a lot of the times decorators will take a heat transfer pillow or a piece of paper, like a craft paper cover sheet, and they'll lay it inside. And so there's a lot of time really taken up in just this process, loading the pillow, getting it in there flat, and laying it out to prepare it to produce your transfer. It's a lot quicker if I can just simply do that threading method where, again, I was splitting it open, threading it on, print my front, pull it out, slide it, and then print my back. So that's really where the benefit of speed comes in with threadability. Having the ability to load these on without pillows or pads is an incredible option. I always think about even if I'm printing something like a bag where I have a lot of multiple areas on the garment that I'm going to be printing, being able to take out the bottom platen to print my transfer. That's another great way to speed up the process. So rather than using these pillows and these pads for small print locations, being able to leverage those interchangeable platens is huge as well, as I showed a little bit in the presentation. Another thing with transfers is I want to load the team uniform back on here, and I want to talk about the way the transfers that you choose can speed up your print process. So I'm going to go ahead and load this football jersey on here, and I'm going to grab my transfer for the next application. So to do this, what I'm using for the design here, actually let me go ahead and spread it to the back since I grabbed the back transfer first. Now when I have this loaded on here, I'm going to go ahead and preheat to remove some of the moisture and wrinkles. That's an area that unfortunately you're not going to be able to cut your time savings on because you don't want to eliminate that preheat there, that step. But you'll notice with my name and number here, I've actually have them pre-spaced. So there's a common objective that we talk a lot about as far as lining up names and numbers and a cost-effective way to do it. If trying to save time is your main goal so you can get back to doing other things in your business, then you may want to consider a pre-spaced transfer like this, because something like this transfer is going to allow me to be able to print very quickly and easily because I don't have to individually lay out numbers and letters, which is another option for printing jerseys. So the pre-spaced text in the CAD cut form is great for that. I'll just press this to talk a little bit about some other benefits with transfers. This material has a 6-second application and a hot peel release. The big benefit in that is you're looking for transfers for producing your items is finding something that has a hot peel release, that has a fast application, because fast applications, hot peel releases are ideal for producing things very quickly. And so that's one of the nice things about that pre-spaced name in thermofilm. Fashion film, which we applied a little bit earlier, also has that hot peel application. The other nice thing that fashion film does is it also has a multi-step application. So I'll review some of these things in a little bit, but having a multi-step application is incredibly important for multiple colors of heat transfer vinyl because it allows you to speed up the process and also produce it in a more quality way because you don't have to worry about stretching, which often happens when you layer 2 colors of vinyl. So to do this, I'm just going to load that t-shirt back onto my heat press platen here. Preheat to remove some of those moisture and wrinkles. And then I'm going to go ahead and line up both of my colors here. So this is a 2-color design in black and gold. So I'm going to lay this out here in a way that I can see the design. One thing you'll notice is I actually have a tool here for lining up. So I want to address the laser alignment tool real quick first. Aligning things up correctly is incredibly important for running a lot of jobs. Just like I had showed you with a lot of people shaking out the wrinkles and laying out your shirts effectively, I see a lot of decorators that load a shirt on, put on a transfer, take off the shirt, hold it up. No, that doesn't look right. I'll load it back onto my heat press platen, change it a little bit, do it again. And I've seen this happen 5 to 10 times. If this is you, go ahead and like the broadcast because I can tell there's a lot of people that do this. I do this myself. It's easy to over guess and want to make sure everything is absolutely perfect because, of course, if you ruin it, you'll have to do it again. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a laser alignment tool that allows you to kind of automate that. And so I've loaded my shirt on in the threading manner, and I'm going to take this layout wizard that comes with the laser alignment tool and lay it out on my platen. This actually has 4 interchangeable lasers that's going to allow me to completely adjust the lines to wherever I want them to be. And so I'm going to make a center line down the middle using that blue line as my guide. And I'm actually going to go about 3 inches from the top part of the collar. So I'm going to adjust this to the red line. The green line, which is reading a number 3 on here, is actually 4 inches down, which would be ideal for back prints. There's a arched text layout and then also an option for doing a left chest logo as well. So once I have the lasers that I want working, the 4 lasers will allow me to do pretty much any print. Even if I wanted to create a box for my left chest logos, I could do that by fully adjusting these rotatable lasers. Now once I load my shirt on, every single shirt that I press, all I have to do is align the top part of my transfer with that red laser there. And then I'll go ahead and press this bottom layer using the fast tack application of CAD-CUT Fashion Film, which is just 2 seconds. Peeling back that top layer carrier. And then finishing the full application of 15 seconds with that hot peel release. So it allows me to really speed up the process there. I don't have any vinyl exposed, but you always want to make sure to use a cover sheet with multicolor just in case you do have a little bit exposed. And I'll press for that full 15-second application. So pairing together something like a laser alignment tool with a fast application, you can see how quickly you can produce even multicolor graphics in your shop. And so being able to invest in a tool like a laser alignment really can take a lot of the guesswork out of and the time that's spent doing a lot of that. Hold the shirt up, does it look straight? No, okay, I'll pick it back down. You know, adjust the transfer. If you're adjusting your transfer more than 2 or 3 times, you may want to consider automating it. There's a lot of benefit for being able to set it up and then automate it for all of those shirts, especially if you're doing a lot of large orders. If you're ordering a lot of screen printed transfers, and they are 75 to 100 piece orders, being able to set this up once on that shirt, produce all of those at the exact same length and width is really incredible. So even if you're doing half the orders and maybe your spouse is doing the other half. My husband and I printed t-shirts for a long time, and his version of 3 inches down from the collar and my version of 3 inches down from the collar were a little bit different. And so while they didn't look drastically different, every shirt was a little bit off. And so it was a benefit to us being able to leverage something like this where it was always uniform no matter who printed these items. And so think about that for those applications as well. I'm going to head back over to the computer and talk a little bit more about some time savings for t-shirt printing as well as selling and different options there. So we reviewed the auto open heat press. Gina joining us today absolutely loves her Hotronix auto clam open, so she can attest to the benefit of having that auto open release. The threadability, which really saves you time in fighting those wrinkles to get a flat print, makes printing front and backs easier. That quick slip pad protector, which was that lower platen cover, was a lot easier for threading garments on faster and easier. And then the interchangeable platens was good for printing more items effectively and quickly. The pre-spaced names and numbers, so if you're doing a lot of names and numbers with pre-cuts, maybe considering doing pre-spaced names and numbers so you don't have a lot of individual layout. Hot peel applications are huge. When you're sourcing transfers or you're looking for transfers, find ones that have hot peel applications, especially if you're doing multicolor, because that allows you to quickly produce them faster. It's very difficult to do multicolor with a warm peel or a cold peel material as the background layer because it takes a lot of extra time in the application. Likewise, if you can find one that'll quickly tack for a few seconds, that saves you some time as well. Fashion film, thermofilm, glitter flake, fashion film electric, and premium plus are all materials that will tack for 2 to 5 seconds and allow you to produce much quicker. Those application instructions are always available on Stahls.com for multicolor. And then we talked a little bit about the alignment system, so being able to leverage something like this where you can ensure consistent placement and accurate positioning on all of your heat printing jobs, and then easily lay out your transfers and designs. Next, I want to jump to the business side of things, or the sales and marketing side. I guess it's all business side, and talk about setting up sales channels that can start to bring you in new business. And so I talked a lot earlier about being able to think about what you do well in your business and then outsourcing the rest. And so maybe for you, creating designs is where you're optimally going to spend your time, or maybe it is producing. Maybe nobody can produce better than you with weeding graphics and heat applying and creating the artwork. But sales and marketing, which is a crucial part of your business, may just not be your niche. So being able to find other sales channels that can sell products for you so you can do and spend your time focusing on the operation side of it. And so one way to do this that I had mentioned was a fundraising program. So setting up a fundraising program with local schools. If you're going to be selling into the school market, that's one that you want to try to target. And then allowing basically the booster groups or the sports teams or the school to sell for you. And then ultimately all you're going to do is set a deadline, collect the orders, and you'll do the production. And so you'll give them a percentage of the sale, just like you would give a commission to a salesperson, but you're not having to spend your time making the sales and taking the orders and doing all that. You're going to allow them to do that and really push for you the same way that a commissioned salesperson would, because they ultimately need to pay for their equipment or pay for trips or do something for the school. And so they're going to want to sell as much spirit wear as possible or school apparel as possible. And so by setting up that fundraising program, you're basically giving them an incentive to want to purchase products, to want to promote your products, and then ultimately you can receive the benefit. You will give up a little bit of margin this way, but the same way that you would with a commissioned salesperson, and you certainly would profit and bring in more revenue over time because you're spending more time producing more garments rather than producing less garments for a higher higher cost. So the other option I want to talk a little bit about is using the idea of a third-party website. And so if you sell online or you're considering selling online, finding different ways to sell through third-party sites like Etsy or eBay or Amazon and listing your products there and allowing those third-party sites that are built up to sell products to do it for you. And so a lot of people will, if they're looking for custom t-shirts for, let's say, a wedding, they may visit Etsy. Or maybe they're looking for a birthday shirt, they may visit Amazon. And so you can find a lot of benefit from using a site that's already built with search engines where people are going and searching for products to have them find yours. And there's a ton of tips online for using all of those resources for t-shirts, apparel. And so that's another avenue to consider. Do I want to consider using a third-party site like that? Another idea would be to set up brand ambassadors. And this, you may notice, it's kind of a new idea that's really hit the marketing channels lately with the increase in social media and Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and blogs. And so the idea of setting up a brand ambassador is where you would select people that have a strong influence in the social community and in the target markets that you're selling to. So an example I would use for this would be, let's say, cheer apparel. maybe you're getting ready to sell to a ton, you want to sell into the cheer market, so you may set up people that are leaders in the cheer industry and that have a lot of followers and talk a lot about cheer products of some sort on their Instagram or Facebook or blog, and you would set them up as brand ambassadors. As a brand ambassador, you could set the program up to give them a kickback for discounted products, or give them a promo code that they can use on their website, that anybody who uses the promo code that has their name and numbers and their information would automatically give them a commission. Again, you're just setting up commission salespeople, basically, that you don't have to hire, pay benefits for, pay all of that. And there's much less risk in having that type of process. And there's a lot of softwares that allow you to set up brand ambassadors and kind of control them and manage them through different software programs. So it's a cool thing to look into, especially if you're in a niche market where using somebody who's really targeted could really help to drive your products. And you would want to make sure as you set those people up that you're not only, they're going to know what the rules are, what are they expected to do. So you expect them to do these 3 things throughout the month to promote your products. Maybe they need to post certain social media posts using your products. Maybe they need to promote it in some way through a video or something, or be creative in what you're asking them to do, and then also let them know that as they continue to work more towards it, they'll get that return back for them. So brand ambassadors, fundraising programs, third-party sites, and then the 4th thing to consider is using your customers. So asking for referrals. Simply get extra business cards and ask your customers that you already have had a lot of success with, and ask them to give you referrals. So there's no harm in that, and that's really the best type of business when you're thinking about that type of thing. The next thing I want to talk about are some marketing time savers. And so marketing is an incredibly important part of your business, as is selling, and so finding ways to do it smarter is important. So first thing I said is schedule time for email and social media. If you spend a lot of time on social media or through email, you can easily see that it can control your day. And so it can spend a lot of time either answering emails or responding to messages on social media. So set aside time to do that rather than allowing those 2 things to manage your day, especially if you do a lot of selling through email and social media, so being able to respond in that way. Another thing is if you do a lot of posting on your social media, is to use template tools that are quick and easy to use. So one tool that I really like that I wanted to show you guys is called Canva. So Canva actually is set up with an easy way, and there's free versions and there's paid versions of this type of tool, and there's a ton of these tools out there. But this is just one example where you can actually create social media posts very easily. So let's say I want to create a Facebook post. I can select from one of their templates, upload my own artwork, and really just quickly create posts for my social media. So I don't have to spend a lot of time using my design software to create quick, engaging posts that are going to drive people back to my website or drive people to want to buy my products or to promote my products. So being able to use template tools like this really can speed up the time that you're spending on your social media post. In addition to that, using a social media management system, Hootsuite is one that's really popular that a lot of people use with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. If you have multiple social media channels that you're using, you should definitely consider using a tool like this to schedule your posts, to monitor your posts, and really just keep your day very consistent with that. And so those tools are really incredibly helpful, even for analytics, to see is what I'm doing working. So using a tool like that for that reason. Another thing to consider is freelancers, people that do this for a living, but they may be really experienced in this. So freelancers or consulting companies that can maybe take on the marketing for your business. You may be able to find somebody who you know who's maybe a college student that may be really savvy in social media that can take that on for you, maybe a relative of yours, and you could then just pay them in a freelance capacity where they're getting a certain dollar amount, and that takes a lot of the risk away from having to hire actual employees, train them, consider benefits, and consider all of that goes into having employees in a business. And so that's another way to consider doing that as well. The last couple things I want to cover is really following into being able to quickly quote jobs and take orders quickly. And so I showed you a pricing calculator a little bit earlier, and I wanted to reference that too. If you go to stahlstv.com, the Ultimate Transfer Vinyl Cost Calculator can be downloaded. That's the one I had showed you when I did the pricing with CatGut Fashion Film. So being able to set yourself up with Excel sheets like this and tools where you can easily see what a job's going to cost you and get your pricing for your customers is a huge time saver, because you don't have to do the steps every time to figure it out. You can just easily input in your dimensions and get your pricing. So if you're doing heat transfer vinyl, I definitely would recommend downloading this calculator. Again, you can see I can put in my hourly rates, my overhead percentage. Even though you're a home business, you always want to account for this in your pricing, because if you ever expand to add more employees or expand to a brick and mortar shop, you want to have that already covered. You don't want to move locations and all of a sudden have to increase your pricing for your current customers. So always set up your pricing with the mindset that you're going to grow into a brick and mortar shop. Again, you can put your dimensions down here for your size, the number that you're going to be selling, the cost of your blank garment. So we'll go ahead and put $5 for our garment cost here. And as I start to put in all of this information to really output how long it's going to take for me to produce my order, so I can see heat pressing this will cost me $2.50, weeding will cost me $2.50. I can see how much material I would need to produce the whole order. So if you don't have inventory, you need to buy material for each job on demand. Certainly can see how much you would need, so you're not overspending there or trying to do the math to figure out how much do I need. I have these many, I need 75 of these designs. How much material am I going to need? That easily creates it for you. And then it also shares some information here for your total cost, so you can help to set up your pricing and everything as well. So you see your total cost for the job, total cost per piece, and then you can calculate what your selling price is based on that. We don't give selling price information because each person is different. Some people recommend doubling your cost for your selling price, and other people will benefit from a different pricing structure, which might be a dollar amount per piece that they're selling. So that's one great thing to consider. And then I also had showed you a little bit earlier a screen printed transfer calculator that will allow you to easily understand what your cost is going to be for those screen printed transfers. The quicker that you can produce quotes from a calculator or a grid or some kind of pricing strategy tool that you've set up, the quicker that it'll be for you to be able to produce items for your customers, because you don't have to spend a lot of time when somebody emails you and says, I need 75 shirts that are 2-color and on this black t-shirt. You don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, it's going to take me 2 days to get back to you with a quote. You can easily give them the quote. I'd even recommend keeping a list of the garments that you use most often and having the pricing and everything that you pay for those easily available on an Excel list as well, so you don't have to go back to the website and think, what did that shirt cost me from this website, or where did I buy that from? Those quick reference tools, those pricing grids, while it takes some time to set up in the beginning, they're incredibly helpful for moving forward for your business and saving you time there. And then the last thing I want to talk about is kind of on a separate side of that, but just creating and keeping templates that are for commonly used forms. So sales orders, fundraising forms, promotional flyers, anything like that, you should absolutely create and keep ones that are easily editable and that you can continue to use over and over again. One place you can find extra of these is at transferexpress.com. Under the education section of their website, they have custom t-shirt sales flyers. So they even have some templates already built for you that you can use. So if you don't have these, no need to reinvent the wheel. They've got spirit sale flyers you can use for your fundraising sales. And they even have some flyers for different markets, like for schools or resorts or different things. So you can easily print these and use them to promote your products. But think about setting up forms like this and templates and tools that really can make your business successful. And so that's some things to consider moving forward for saving yourself some time. I think I've answered all of the questions from Facebook Live throughout the broadcast that I've seen. And then, Taylor, have I gotten any questions on GoToWebinar throughout today's broadcast?
We do have a few questions that came through.
Okay.
Do schools typically have the design they want, or do you have to create it?
That's a great question. So when you're selling to schools, the design that they use always varies. A lot of the times they rely on the printer to create that design themselves. They may have a mascot that they want you to use, or they may have a certain colorway they want you to use, but a lot of the times they do rely on the creativity and the designer and the shop for that type of design.
And then we have a question that asks, what if you have a change of an element per shirt? So this person they're creating t-shirts for dog sports, and they would like to change out the dog that they want to print on each shirt. So what's the easiest way to do that?
The easiest way to do that, if you're switching out one element, would be to, well, it depends on how you're printing them and how many colors are within the design. I would probably recommend setting up that background as a template and then having the different dogs as a separate transfer, so I could print that back design with maybe a screen printed transfer that is very fast and easy to print, very inexpensive, and then add my customization element for the dog mascot head using maybe a CAD heat transfer vinyl or a digital transfer for full color in between the center there, so I'm able to kind of easily mix and match and produce those quickly. All right, looks like I got all the questions today. I went a little over an hour, so I apologize. The recording of this will be available on stahlstv.com, and you guys can check us out there for more educational videos. Thanks for joining me today.